In today's video, what is the best carb loading strategy?
All by myself.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com, and today we're going to discuss the idea of carb loading for a bodybuilding show. But we're also just going to basically cover the idea of what carb loading is, what it looks like. I'm going to review a study that just came out in this month's issue of Mass, where they actually studied bodybuilders who were doing a carb load. And then I'm also going to talk about the strategies and why I feel carb loading, water, sodium, and how we manipulate that going into a show can be optimized to make sure we get the most out of our physique. And if this is the kind of information that you're interested in, hit that subscribe button because it makes my day. This month's article that I'm reviewing from Mass, which I'll link below if you're interested in getting a subscription, it's a great location to get information about current research and what it kind of tells us and how we can improve our knowledge base and perhaps ask even better questions. Well, Eric Helms did this month's research review, and Eric is himself a pro-natural bodybuilder, has a PhD, has been around the sport for a long time, so I was very interested to find out what he thought of this carb loading strategy, where they basically took two groups of bodybuilders, and they had the one group that was doing a kind of rapid backload approach where they were kind of depleting themselves and then loading carbs. Now, the parameters for loading the carbs were 8 to 12 grams per kilogram of body weight. So what I did was I did the math on myself. So I compete on a bodybuilding stage, and I'll probably have some pictures here for you to see, around 90 kilograms. That would be between 720 and 1,080 grams of carbs in a backload period. And what they found was the group that did the backload definitely had fuller muscle bellies. And what's interesting is this is actually research done in pretty high-level bodybuilders. These bodybuilders had to qualify just to get to the event that they were at. One of them was the South American Arnold Classic. So as you can see, these are not just your average run-of-the-mill bodybuilders that might walk into any show. They actually had to qualify by winning their class just to get to this show and get on a big stage like this. And so what we have here are very lean individuals that were using a protocol that required them to take in a lot of carbohydrates the last day or so before getting on stage. Overall, what we saw was the people that did the carb backload after depletion, well, they saw a big increase in their muscle fullness, muscle size. Now, I've been competing in bodybuilding since 2008, and a lot has changed over that time, both with my knowledge and my experience and things I've seen and done. And I've come to a conclusion that there is a best way to do it, but that doesn't mean it's always the best way. People's bodies are so dynamic that I don't think that you can look at every single person the same, and thus it's very important that you're paying attention to an athlete, to yourself, throughout the process of contest prep, because our bodies change. Even if you do multiple shows from week to week, the way you digest, the way you process, the way you fill out can change. So being that lean, you can really start to notice the hour by hour differences that we go through. So what we want to do is eliminate the possibility of failure, eliminate the possibility of kind of just throwing it all up there and seeing what happens. Now, the issue that I find with a rapid backload is that most of the time we are not consuming foods that we've had throughout prep. So although you may in fact have fuller muscle bellies, this study even mentioned that there were a lot of issues with digestion amongst these competitors, most notably bloating and diarrhea. Well, if you have those two things happening, you're going to have a midsection that does not look the best it can possibly be. And if you have diarrhea, you might even get dehydrated. And so since muscle is 75–80% water, anytime that you're really playing with fluid balance in the body, you're pulling water out of muscle cells. So we really want to make sure that we're not having issues digesting. So let's talk a little bit about this rapid backloading protocol and why it might be used. Well, there's been some research in years past on endurance athlete, how they can get a supraphysiological response to a rapid backload of carbohydrates. And I've seen this in action, and it's very demanding on the athlete. And so what they have to do is they have to load carbohydrates for 24 hours. But what ends up happening is that's literally 24 hours that you don't get a good 7–8 hours of sleep. This can thus increase stress, increase cortisol. So instead of doing that, what I have my athletes do is a depletion a week out from the show, and then we do a more gradual increase. And I'm going to explain exactly why. Well, the big pitfalls that we see with this rapid backload of adding, let's say, 1,000 grams of carbohydrates the day before the show is there is a big unknown on several levels. Digestion. Digestion starts when we put the food in our mouth. It then goes into our stomach, gets broken down, then something called gastric emptying happens where it goes from the stomach to the small intestine to the large intestine, and then it becomes waste. Now that is the full process of digestion. By adding 1,000 grams of carbohydrates in the last day, you are asking a lot of your digestive system to have all that work done and everything be in place the next day when you go to pump up. So the approach that I use is called progressive linear loading, and this is through different trials. I've tried things like loading in the beginning of the week, saying a high day, then tapering back down. This was a very common approach, say 5 to 10 years ago. In fact, I used it for many years with my clients, but I kept finding that while they would look good on show day, they didn't look the best they could possibly look. So what I have found that works much better than any of this is taking an approach that we want to fill out the muscle cells gradually over the week, while also putting us in a position to continue digesting well, continue training, and keep the processes going, eliminating as many variables as possible. The one variable that I want to pay attention to here is that while carbohydrates are going up, stress is coming down, and the physique is getting better every single day. And for that reason, it requires a daily check-in. I'll put a screenshot on the screen of what a protocol like this would look like that I call a linear progressive load. And I learned this from Dr. Joe Klemczewski, who explained to me very well just how the physiology of the body works and why this makes the most sense. Our muscles, if you think of them as balloons, now they are much more dynamic than balloons, but if you completely deplete a balloon a few days before stage and then try to fill it back out rapidly, you either may underfill or overfill. If you overfill a muscle cell with glycogen and water, what happens? You get a spilled effect, and you actually get some fluid in the interstitial layer between the skin and the muscle, and you just don't look as sharp. You can correct this by training, but oftentimes you don't have a chance to train on the day of your competition. So instead of, say, having 1,000 grams of carbohydrates on the Friday before the show, you might only have 500 or 400 or 300, but you've been increasing them every single day. You might have started at 200 and ended up at 450 by Friday. By this way, you have not depleted at all. You've continued to train, so your digestion and your appearance are very predictable. You're looking at yourself every day in the morning, every day after you work out, and you understand, can I push more carbohydrates? Can I push more sodium? Can I push more things into the body going into the show? Or do you reach a point where, you know what? This is where we should just be maintaining. This is the best approach that I have found. Why? Well, we start to predictably be able to keep fluids very stable. We keep training very stable. We're no longer going in the gym trying to crush PRs. We are just going through the process of training the body parts, depleting slightly, and keeping the process of the body, keeping nutrients moving into and out of the muscles at the same rate, so we can predictably load us up on the Friday, wake up on the day of the show. Our digestion is in place, our fluid balance is in place, and we're able to get a really good pump. Now, a lot is made about the sodium in the water going into a peaking phase like this. Now, what I really try to do is get my athletes into a place where we keep water completely stable. That's right. So if they've been having, say, 120 to 240 ounces of water a day, well, we're gonna keep that stable. And what I'll typically do is increase sodium gradually as carbohydrates go up. So I want to thank Mass for continuing to put out great information. I do get the subscription for free, but I have a link below if you'd be interested in looking into using it for your own research. Eric is someone that I continue to look up to in this sport as I continue to expand my own knowledge. Hopefully this video finds you guys well. If you have more questions around this process of carbohydrate loading, I have other videos on the topic, but you can leave a comment in the section below and I'll try to respond and perhaps create another video around that question that you have. All right, guys, that's it for me today. I hope you're having an awesome Saturday. 2020 better be off to an awesome start, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.